U.S. law requires that every child has a right to a free public education, without discrimination on the basis of race, color, sex, or national origin. Our country has a responsibility to fulfill that right, but this wasn't always accepted by society, nor was it always actually provided by our government. In the time in which Hightower Kealing was raised and lived, education was vastly different than it is today, especially for African American citizens. Kealing was born the son of two freed slaves in Austin, Texas on April 1, 1859. He was part of the first generation of African American students to attend a free public school during the post-war Reconstruction era. Kealing received his primary schooling in Austin, Texas, and went on to attend Straight University in New Orleans, a college dedicated specifically to educating formerly enslaved people. He studied philosophy, the sciences, languages, sociology, and the Bible. In 1875, Kealing became a member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, where he developed his commitment to improving the lives and communities of African Americans in the United States post-slavery. Wanting to pursue his education further, he then went on to attend Tabor College to earn his doctorate degree, where he graduated in 1881. He grew up to become a very well-known educator and orator. He delivered many speeches to the public and was known for his fine wit and rhetoric. Kealing believed that it was essential that every child, regardless of race, receive a good education and that the success of all students must be facilitated by the public school system. He believed every child needed to be pushed to reach their highest potential, and he worked at many schools throughout his life and dedicated himself to helping educate primarily African American children. When he moved to East Austin in 1884, he began to establish the foundation for Austin's African American educational system. He first began working at Robertson Hill Elementary School in 1884, which was Austin's first African American elementary school. He later went on to become the first principal of Anderson High School in 1889. At that time, Anderson was just a high school branch of Robertson Hill, but it was later renamed Anderson in 1909 and became Austin's first all-African American high school. Hightower Kealing played a major role and was posthumously honored with a local school named after him in 1930. Kealing School was the first junior high school for Austin's African American students. It later went on to be dubbed Kealing Middle School when they added a 6th grade class. Eventually, desegregation activists in Austin began to fight for the integration of schools, but the Austin Independent School District did everything they could to prevent it. When Anderson High School was first founded, Austin had only set aside funds for the education of white students. Without the necessary budget to fund the education of this new demographic of African American students, they double taxed African American families. Wilhelmina Delco, a Texas educator and legislator, once said, "Under slavery, blacks were killed if they could read, so you know education is valuable." Ms. Delco's statement highlights where literacy was suppressed, education was seen as a threat. Austin had been following a separate but equal policy for segregated education, but refused to follow through on that policy. Initially, Anderson's athletic fields were 10 blocks from campus. The campus was one massive room, and Anderson High School was in desperate need of renovations. It was the only African American school in Austin for many years, and their facilities and teaching equipment were run down and inadequate. Eventually, after a long fight, in 1948, AISD purchased a 22-acre plot for Anderson High School. They had 25 classrooms, courses in math, science, economics, business, and art, and a football field on campus, a gymnasium, and state-of-the-art equipment in the cafeterias. Even though Anderson faced so much pushback, the teachers there pushed their students to reach their highest potential and surpass what others told them they could achieve. The renovated school became a boon to the East Austin African American community. The reason for AISD's sudden willingness to prioritize the education of Austin's African American students was actually to fend off integration efforts. They had hoped that renovating schools would keep the activists complacent, and the African American population of Austin segregated in the east side of the city. These efforts ultimately proved unsuccessful, though, and the integration of the school system in Austin was enacted into law in 1971. However, even though Kealing Middle School is no longer racially segregated, it has shifted to an academically segregated school. During my time there, in the early 2020s, Kealing had an academically rigorous magnet program, as well as an academy program. The magnet program was for the best and brightest of Austin, mostly made up of Caucasian and Asian students, and the academy program was for those in the neighborhood zoned to the school, primarily composed of African American and Hispanic students. Students in the magnet program were required to take all advanced classes and were held to a higher academic standard than those in the academy program. The students Kealing Middle School was initially intended to serve. After all the progress Hightower Kealing had made in education, there still remains a modern academic segregation in the school that bears his name. Kealing had a wife, 4 daughters, and 1 son. His daughters were named Goldie, Frances, Caroline, and Cecilia, and his son was named Hightower Jr. Many of his children went on to pursue education or to attend the same schools he worked at and attended himself. His eldest daughter, Goldie, taught in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. His second daughter, Frances, taught at a high school in St. Joseph, Missouri. His third daughter, Caroline, was a student at Tabor College, and his youngest daughter, Cecilia, was a student at Western University. Kealing served as the vice president of the State Normal School in Prairie View, Texas, and the president of Paul Quinn College in Waco, Texas, a school specifically dedicated to educating freedmen and their families. He also acted as the supervising principal of Robertson Hill Elementary School in Austin, Texas, the first principal of Anderson High School in Austin, and the president of Western University in Quindaro, Kansas. He went on to become an editor and contributor to many reviews, including the African Methodist Review and the Journal of Education. In 1911, he also became a member of the Anna Jean Fund. This $1 million fund for the education of African American youth was associated with individuals of national prestige, such as former U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt, who served on the board with Kealing. He was a member of the Political Academy, the International Peace Conference, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, and the National Educational Association. He also authored many books and pamphlets and was commonly viewed as, quote, a credit to his race. While working at Western University, Kealing fell ill. During his illness, the spring term at Western University ended a week early in honor of his absence and to give him more time to rest. While he remained dedicated and tried to keep up with his work, he passed away from his lengthy illness with his family surrounding him on February 25, 1918. His funeral was held at Western University, where he was honored by many. The military department cadets were on relief watch during his funeral services, and he was saluted while being buried by Lincoln High School cadets. And a boon and inspiration to those around him. This momentous historical figure made many improvements to the education of African American students and dedicated his entire life to the pursuit of education and truth. He used to say to his dear friend, Professor John R. Hawkins, "Truth will win. The length of years that it may take to overcome these conditions is not the thing we should worry over. It will come by and by." In an interview for the Kansas City Sun, Hawkins remarked, "Kealing was a student, and as such he was able to do so much more than many other men. I do not think I would be overestimating the facts at all if I said that he was a 5-talent man. We do not have many of them in either race. He was a great man. All his faculties have been developed for the accomplishment of the things he did." In the Kansas City Sun's article for his obituary, he was dubbed, quote, one of the race's greatest men. He was an earnest, determined, thoughtful, and intelligent man who fought for educational reform and worked his whole life for social and educational progress for all. We all know that schools and teachers have a responsibility to educate, and that students have the right to learn. But as Kealing believed, students also have the right to an equal education. Although Kealing was an excellent school, the academic segregation of Kealing Middle School still limits the opportunities of its academy students. Wilhelmina Delco reminds us, when you pigeonhole kids as dumb or smart, you cost them the opportunity to move up before they even try. Education can fail kids by prejudging them instead of fostering an environment where all have opportunity. Kealing's work to provide an equal education to all is left unfinished. What is necessary for these final academic integration to be completed? It is up to the next generation of Hightower Kealings to figure that out and make Kealing's vision finally a reality.